So welcome. This is Everbridge Public Safety Conversations. I am the Director of Government Affairs, and I am having these 5 sessions in which we interview a leading expert in climate risk and regulation policy in the international environment to accelerate and to exchange considerations on how to ensure the safety of populations around the world. Telecommunication is particularly key to resilience to disasters and climate risk, since 95% of the population is today covered by mobile networks and having a handset. She is the head of the Division for Environment and Emergency Telecommunication within the ITU Telecommunication Development Bureau. Mrs. Gray, Vanessa, coordinates the Bureau's work in the area of emergency telecommunication, and she has a long-standing experience globally. Good day. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for accepting to participate here with us. So today I would like to ask you a question specifically to your role and to your expertise, and namely, what is the role that ITU can play in emergency communications, and specifically in accelerating the deployment of early warning systems, namely now that the Secretary General of the United Nations has launched the Early Warning for All initiative?
The ITU, our main mandate is to help the world communicate and to help countries take advantage of the opportunities of information and communication technologies. And we help reach more people over digital networks, and also we monitor and, of course, also reduce the digital divide. So one important point and role of ITU, and this is also important for early warning systems, is that we bring more people online. We also help to reach more people over early warning systems. And this is, of course, very much linked to the UN Secretary General's call to ensure that by 2027, every person in the world is protected by an early warning system. Because the more people are connected today and the more people are part of the global information society, the more people can be reached over early warning systems. So I think that's first a very important role of the ITU. Then also, and this is, I think, goes to your the second part of your question, we of course want to promote opportunities of information and communication technologies for public warning systems, and we also want to disseminate best practice examples. So here again, we see more people today have access to information and communication technologies, and more people have access to different communication channels. So for early warning systems, we can reach people over the internet, radio, over TV, but of course also over mobile phones. And the more channels we have, the more likely it is that we reach everyone with an early warning system. And one of the great opportunities we see is for the increasing reach and the spread of mobile networks. We know that today over 95% of the world's population has access to mobile broadband networks, and most people in the world today own a mobile phone. So there's really this reach of mobile networks. And we know that mobile network operators across the world have invested billions into rolling out networks, mobile networks and services, because they have a commercial interest, of course. And so what we are trying to promote is to take advantage of these mobile networks and services public warning systems to make sure that we take advantage of these networks to reach people at risk. And one of the great advantages, or one of the technologies we see here with great advantages, is cell broadcast, because with cell broadcast, people can be reached. We can have geolocated warning messages sent to people and communities in places at risk. And we can send messages immediately to people. And that way we can ensure that the majority of people can be reached. So I think this is something that ITU is very keen on promoting. And so we would like to promote cell broadcast as like a minimum early warning system in developing countries. In this context, what we also do is we look at which countries have actually implemented and used mobile early warning systems, in particular cell broadcast. And we see that it is mainly developed countries that have implemented the system. And so this is where we see the role of ITU is to promote the system for developing countries.
It's a great role that ITU has to play in this panorama that you have just described, and a tribute should be given to indeed the mobile operators for the essential role that they do with their commercial networks, but they really play such an important role in people's safety. You know that we are a developer of cell broadcast. We work with a lot of standards, and I completely agree. We are in agreement with all our customers that there shouldn't be one single communication means. But cell broadcast is indeed, in our implementation experience, the minimum basic element that allows to notify in emergency conditions the largest majority. And what about regulation, Vanessa? Do you think that the European example with the European Electronic Telecommunication Code, which has created sort of an incentive for several governments, accompanied by obviously financial incentives that have been put together with the Next Generation EU package in deploying public warning system in the European countries? We are now present in 10 European countries, and other companies are also present in others. Is this something that you think could be an inspiration for other areas in the world?
What we're trying to do is really to highlight what has happened in the EU, to show the approach or the path the EU has chosen to take, that is to have legislation and to ensure that all EU member states have put in place a mobile early warning system with different technological options. And what we would like to do is to highlight how this has happened, how this has evolved in the EU. And also, I think what we are promoting is a regulatory approach amongst the ITU membership and the policymakers. And because I think one of the things we have seen is that a legislative approach can really speed up the process. So in the EU, there was a deadline, which was June of this year, to set up these systems. And it just means it brings together different stakeholders to discuss the options. You mentioned, of course, to discuss financial mechanisms to ensure that the system is set up. But I think while we would say that regulation is not the only path, I think we would promote countries considering at least a regulatory approach and then discussing with their mobile operators and, of course, with other stakeholders involved. And I think this is also very important in general. Of course, for a multi-hazard early warning system to function, we need to drive coordination and we need to initiate the discussions between the different stakeholders. That includes the government policymakers from the emergency management sector, hydrometeorology and telecommunication sectors, from the mobile network operators, but also international organizations such as WMO, UNDRR, and also early warning system experts, as well, of course, as international humanitarian funding organizations.
Yeah, I think the involvement of the private sector, which produces these softwares and which runs the networks, is an important element in the discussions, because it is a technology intensive segment, the one of early warning systems. Not every multi-hazard early warning system is the same.
Yes.
Effectiveness can vary substantially, and we don't need to have a disaster intervene to adjust and to discover that, maybe the system was not adapted to that type of risk. This is something that can be taken care before on the basis of experience.
One thing we would like to see is a very frank and open discussion on the costs, because we often say, a cell broadcast is a relatively affordable way of setting up an early warning system, of reaching a large percentage of the population. But it's also very good here really to look at the costs and to compare to other systems, and to say, how prepared can a country be, with setting up such a cell broadcast system. So having a better idea of the costs, I think, would also be really useful also for donors and for development agencies who make these investments, to be able to say, with this percentage of the population that can be reached over a cell broadcast system with this investment, well, this, possibly makes more sense than investing in sirens or investing in other technologies and channels. So I think it's just really important for everyone to have this information to make informed policy choices, and to decide on the financing of the different systems. Just one other thing I wanted to mention, because we were talking about the role of ITU. One thing I think perhaps ITU could look into is, for example, developing a blueprint for legislation that could help developing countries to adapt legislation and to adapt the legislation to their own needs, but that they have something, a starting point for us to look into. And again, this is something we would develop, of course, with, for example, mobile operators also, or also the GSMA, the Association of Mobile Operators, to make sure that, different interests are represented, but just to help push forward this initiative and to speed up the process.
The ITU has 193 government members, and is so representing a very authoritative voice in the world of telecom, and in particular in the world of communication and information technology. What do you see as the best occasions to express the already important role that telecom operators, that the telecom sector is playing in our lives every day? So Vanessa, what is the key message you would like to bring to our audience from the authoritativeness of an organization representing 193 governments?
We would like to convey the message that of the opportunities that the reach of mobile networks and services offer to reach communities at risk, and to warn about imminent disasters and provide people with actionable advice. We would like to see cell broadcast as a minimum early warning system in developing countries, and hope to convey this message to our regulatory community during the Global Symposium for Regulators, GSR, that will take place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt next June 2023.
We're looking forward to participating or to listening to the conclusions. Thank you so much. Vanessa, thank you so much for your intervention. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward for continuing our discussions and our reflection in the international panels where we will be present.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.